Having sailed these many years on the high seas, today it appears I will end my career as captain of this mighty pirate vessel. If you are to take on a pirate life, there are many things that you must know from my own life story. Who'd have thought that it would come to this? I've survived mutinies and storms, but now I sit in the bowels of my own ship, prisoner of the Royal Navy, me sworn enemy. 'Tis an unheroic ending to this captain's story.
Pirates were amazingly democratic, and there was a captain, obviously, and he was the chief chap on board. A good pirate captain was, first of all, a good leader of men. I mean, that was absolutely basic. And secondly, an excellent navigator. And thirdly, a good leader in battle.
We'll board this ship and kill everyone!
The very interesting thing about pirate ships, as opposed to the Navy, is that if the crew decided they didn't like the captain, they could actually vote him out of office. And there are many times when this happened. You know, the captain wasn't brave in battle, or he upset them, so they simply voted him out and voted somebody else to become captain. There was a quartermaster who acted on behalf of the crew, and he was the one who, when they attacked a ship, would lead the crew into action.
Come on!
And then there might or might not be a boatswain and a carpenter, usually a cooper for making the barrels, and perhaps a first mate. They didn't have lieutenants or midshipmen or any of the other ranks that the Navy had. Before they went into battle, it was agreed that everything should be divided out equally. So they divided everything absolutely equally per man, but the captain got the ship if they captured a ship.
I've captured many a ship in me day, including this very one. The battles have been swift and fiercely fought. Today's attack on the Navy was no exception.
There was a fairly standard method of pirate attack, that you would shadow your victim for a while. When you thought that ship's worth attacking, you would then come up alongside, fire a shot across the bows, which was the traditional way to say heave to and stop your ship. And the pirates would then all appear on deck and make a huge noise. They'd fire one or two guns, but not a lot, because they didn't want to damage the ship. They would throw hand grenades on the deck. They would all yell at the top of their voices and wave their cutlasses around, and generally terrorise the merchant ship they were attacking. Come up alongside, throw grapnel hooks to secure the two ships together, and then they would board the victim. And then, if the crew of the victim hadn't completely surrendered by that stage, then they would cut their throats and throw them overboard, but probably they would have surrendered anyway. There are 4 or 5 famous pirate battles. To me, the most romantic one, it would be the most difficult to film incidentally, was the final battle of Bartholomew Roberts, which took place off the coast of Africa in a gale. And Bartholomew Roberts had 2 ships, and he was attacked by a warship called HMS Swallow, and the battle took place in the height of a storm. Both ships were firing at each other, and in the end, Bartholomew Roberts was killed by a cannonball at the height of the battle, and his ship was captured, and most of the crew were subsequently hanged.
I lost many a member of me crew today, but the passion for a fight me mates demonstrated would make even the great Blackbeard proud.
Blackbeard has become one of the most notorious pirates because he was a great sort of self-promoter, and he would go into battle with smoke billowing around his head and guns all over him. And he was a big, tall man. He was 6'6" or so. He did have a huge beard, black beard, that he plaited when he went into battle. But curiously enough, he was not as fierce as all that. He did attack Charleston, South Carolina, and force the mayor to give him all sorts of stuff. Blackbeard's death in Ocracoke Inlet became I suppose, the most popular or famous pirate battle because it was well publicised at the time. And what happened there was that Lieutenant Maynard was sent by his captain on behalf of the governor of Massachusetts to track down Blackbeard. And Lieutenant Maynard attacked at dawn in 2 small ships and came up alongside Blackbeard. There was a tremendous fight on board. Blackbeard was, by tradition, attacked with something like 20 musket balls and 6 cutlass wounds, and eventually fell to the deck dead. At the end of the day, the decks were running with blood, and Blackbeard supposedly swam round the ship 3 times headless, so that was the end of Blackbeard.
Yes, old Blackbeard would covet our good fortune. Since we put to sea, the crew and I have stolen tremendous treasure.
In the days of Francis Drake, and a bit later than that, the Spanish treasure galleons used to go regularly from the Spanish Main via Havana back to Spain. And so people like Henry Morgan and Francis Drake beforehand knew the treasure galleons' routes and would intercept them. But later pirates actually would know where the trade routes were, and they would shadow a merchant ship for a while and try and work out whether it was a ship worth attacking and whether it was powerfully armed, and if it was too powerfully armed they wouldn't attack it. Pirates first of all went for gold and silver, because that was what would make them rich quick. But also, and what is surprising, is that pirates used to steal what you would call household goods. They'd steal soap and bits and pieces just to keep them going on board. They would also steal very often essential items of gear from the other ship. They might steal anchors and ropes and that sort of thing. A lot of ambitious pirates would trade up their ship. So they would start with like a 26-gun ship. They would attack a 42-gun merchant ship and then take over the merchant ship, and that will become the pirate ship. They put some more guns on it. And some of the famous pirates would have a little fleet of pirate ships so that they'd be on the biggest one, and they have 2 or 3 other ones as well. And what they always endeavoured to steal was plenty of drink.
Give me a full one, George.
And one of the interesting things about a pirate attack is that having got all the loot they wanted, they would end up completely plastered. So that was the usual end of a pirate attack.
Perhaps it was the ale, or the glory. But I must admit that I didn't see the end in sight. I thought we'd keep this string of luck going, as I sat surrounded by pirate booty in me quarters, including the prized parrot that sat on me shoulder, that I stole from the Admiral himself.
What I think so interesting about pirates is that they are instantly recognisable. Somebody can walk into a room and they've only got to have an eye patch or a wooden leg and they're a pirate. And they become associated with a whole lot of things, like walking the plank and all that. But I suppose the key recognisable things are wooden leg, scarf round head, eye patch, earring, pistols, and parrot. I love the whole thing of pirates and parrots. I did quite a bit of research on it. The fact is that parrots were very popular souvenirs for sailors to bring back from the tropics. I mean, they also brought back monkeys and occasionally things like tigers as well, but a parrot was a much easier thing to bring back. You could teach it to whistle and to say things like pieces of 8. The earring was something that you put your savings into, and it was gold. And actually one theory I've heard is that the gold earring would pay for your funeral, so that when you were collapsed on the deck with a knife through your throat, your mates would make sure you got a decent burial. I think the reason pirates had eye patches was simply because, like sailors, they were prone to shipboard accidents and being caught in a sea battle, and you find in accounts of ship's crews that sailors have missing fingers, missing limbs, and missing eyes, and an eye patch is what covered up the missing eyes. So simple as that, really.
Was it a one-leg man?
The thing about peg legs or wooden legs, incidentally, Long John Silver does not have a wooden leg. If you read Treasure Island, he just has one leg only and he hops around on a crutch. And yet he's given rise to the fact that all pirates had wooden legs, so it's sort of rather ironic. But lots of sailors had wooden legs simply because they were easily damaged on board a ship. I mean, sailors were always falling out of the rigging, and you could get yourself crushed with ropes and fall overboard or crush between ships, or get your leg shot off with a cannonball. So sailors tended to have bits and pieces of their bodies missing, and obviously if you had a leg missing, you made do with a wooden leg. I reckon round about 1700, the pirates in the Caribbean started to use a black flag with some sort of scary symbol on it, like a skull or a whole skeleton. The early pirate flags sometimes had a hourglass as well as a skull or something like that, and the theory was that you've got a limited amount of time, and if you don't surrender within that time, you will be dead. So over about 20 years, the skull and crossbones gradually became recognised as the pirate flag. Though actually up to that point, different pirate captains had had variations of their own, but that's what ended up as the pirate flag.
When our ship wasn't sailing under the Jolly Roger, you would have thought by me appearance that I was closer to Sir Francis Drake than to a rogue and a scoundrel.
If Drake had thought of coming to you first, should we be rejoicing at the good news?
You cannot mean Drake's raid on Cadiz.
I do mean Drake's raid on Cadiz.
Sir Francis Drake would never have seen himself as a pirate, but the Spanish did see him as a pirate, and the reason was that Francis Drake went out on a series of plundering expeditions on the Spanish Main and attacked Spanish ships and Spanish treasure ports.
In the last month, English pirates have destroyed some 7,000 tons of our shipping.
When Francis Drake came back, he had a ship loaded with treasure worth $60 million, something like that. And he then becomes, in fact, a part of the English Navy, and he then becomes an English hero, really, and attacks the Spanish Armada and attacks Cadiz and so on. So he ends his life as Sir Francis Drake and a great British hero, but he began life as a pirate.
For a fortnight, the crew and I had been on the run, with an armada of 30 ships set out to capture us. In the end, our galleon was too large to evade the fleet.
The thing about pirate ships is they came in all shapes and sizes, because there was no such thing as a pirate ship built for a pirate. It all depended on which ships the pirates were able to capture. So they might mutiny and take over the ship they were on, or they might have got a small ship, attack a larger one and take that one over. The movies always show huge pirate galleons, and I think the reason for that is that the movie director wanted a huge deck so he could have sword fights and people swinging through the rigging. But all my research has shown that the favourite pirate ship was much smaller. It would often be a single-masted vessel, we would call it a gaff cutter now, with one big huge gaff sail, heavily armed. The reason they liked the smaller ships with the big sails was that they were faster, they were shallow draft, so that they could escape from a much deeper draft vessel in shallow water, and they could be beached at low tide so that you could scrape off the barnacles. A few pirates, like Bartholomew Roberts and Blackbeard, did have large, almost warship-like ships, but they were fairly rare. They were the most successful pirates that went in for the big ships, but your average pirate went in for something much smaller. The pirate hoped that you wouldn't see it was a pirate ship until the last moment. And many pirate ships endeavoured to look exactly like merchant ships and would actually fly friendly flags of a neutral country like Holland or something in order to lull the victim into a false sense of security. And then at the last moment they'd swoop up alongside and raise the Jolly Roger and attack.
For those in me crew that survived the attack, they too await their fate, fearing they'll end up like old Captain Kidd, swinging in the breeze for all to see.
Captain Kidd never meant to be a pirate. He was a Scotsman who went out to live in the West Indies. He became a privateer. He bought a house in New York, married and had 2 daughters, and he then went to London and he set up a privateering expedition, went out to the Indian Ocean to catch pirates, but he had a mutinous crew. He didn't catch any pirates, and he actually turned pirate himself, captured a ship called the Quedar Merchant, which was a treasure ship, and upset the East India Company by capturing a East India Company ship. A reward was put out for him.
Described as 5 feet 10 inches in height, brown bushy hair, shabby with an inclination to be genteel.
When he arrived back in New York, the governor there arrested him, sent him back to England. He was tried before the House of Commons, the only pirate to be tried there, and was condemned to death and executed at Execution Dock. And to this day there is an inn called the William Kidd overlooking the spot where he was hanged.
Rest assured, this captain will not go down without a fight. They'll have to kill me in a mighty battle, like the great Black Bart, if they plan to end me time as a pirate captain.
Bartholomew Roberts was a Welshman, and he became a merchant seaman, and he rapidly established himself in the West Indies as a ferocious and very successful pirate, and he very rapidly traded up until he had a whole fleet of ships. He captured during his lifetime, 40 or 50 merchant ships. He sailed across the Atlantic several times, and eventually became such a menace that the British sent out a warship to track him down, and he was actually, in the end, cornered off Africa and killed in a sea battle.
The Admiral has me imprisoned and may torture me, may kill me crew, but he will never find the treasure he seeks. For only I know the place where it is hidden.
Devil's hides can find Mr. Silver, but not when them that finds has hid it, says I.
The thing about buried treasure is that I don't really believe in it. There definitely were certain accounts of buried treasure. We know that Captain Kidd buried some treasure on Gardiner's Island outside New York, but we think that most of it was subsequently retrieved within a year or so of him doing that. And my theory is that Captain Kidd's whole life became so famous because he was tried in London and executed at Execution Dock, that buried treasure became associated with pirates. There are in fact very few accounts of pirates actually burying treasure, and in a way, what's the point? What you wanted to do was to get back to civilization and blow the money on wine, women and song, and not bury it in the sand somewhere. I must say, if I was going for buried treasure, I would look for sunken treasure galleons, Spanish treasure galleons, because we know where a lot of them were. Many sank in the Florida Straits and the Windward Passage and in the Havana area, and there's a lot of treasure out there waiting to be found, and you're far more likely to find one of those than a sunken pirate ship.
So here I sit, awaiting my fate. Let the Royal Navy try to kill me. Give it their best shot. There is no torture or punishment that I fear.
Oh, poor Milgan I am, and I haven't spoke with a Christian these 5 years.
5 years? Were you shipwrecked?
Nay, mate. Marooned.
The chief pirate punishment was marooning, which was very simple really. You put the pirate ashore, usually on a deserted island or islet, and by tradition he was allowed a gun and a bit of gunpowder and some bullets and a flask of water to survive or not. It all depended really whether he was picked up by a passing ship. Cutting off ears and noses was reasonably common, and then of course death for anyone who really broke every code in the book, and how you were killed depended on the pirate captain, really. Walking the plank is, as far as I'm concerned, a complete myth. In all the research I've done on piracy, I found one account of walking the plank. The thing about walking the plank is that it appears in Peter Pan. It then appears in all the famous movies, Douglas Fairbanks Jr., Errol Flynn. Everybody's seen the movies, and therefore everybody assumes pirates make people walk the plank.
Jack Sparrow, be it known that you have been charged, tried and convicted for your willful commission of crimes against the Crown.
Gallows Point was a particular spot in Jamaica, just near Port Royal, where pirates were hanged who were caught in Jamaica. A pirate hanging was a very public spectacle. You didn't have television in those days, so everybody would roll up to a pirate hanging to have a good time, really. They set up the gallows on the waterfront. The pirate would be brought out, go up a ladder, and the noose would be put round his neck, and then the ladder would be kicked away, and he dropped and was hopefully died immediately. Usually what then happened, if the pirate was famous enough, the body would be put in an arrangement of iron hoops and chains and hung from a gallows that would be positioned somewhere where all the sailors could see it. The point about it was a warning to sailors tempted to take up piracy that if you take up piracy, that's likely to be how you end your life.
Try as they might, this is not the end for this captain. Know this, I will never be stopped. For as sure as this medallion of Aztec gold hangs around my neck, I am not one they can kill off so easily. I am more than their sworn enemy. I am a pirate.